what's a really fast way to make the neck of the guitar more familiar to me. I need to know where are the chords and where are the notes on the guitar and what is the connection between these chords and this particular set of notes. What's most important to us is that we need to learn that stuff in a physical way with our hands, not so much with our heads. So that's where the CAGED system comes in, and I've done a couple of videos about the CAGED system. I want to talk about the CAGED system today. We're going to look at the 5 CAGED chord shapes: C, A, G, E, and D. We're going to look at the 5 CAGED patterns of the major scale that are directly related to each of those shapes. We're going to look at a simple practice drill. So how can I get this information into my fingers so I'm associating a knowledge of the notes with a knowledge of the chords? We're going to learn how we can use the CAGED scale patterns to help us figure out advanced chords. For example, if I have an 11 chord or a 9 chord, I can use CAGED to help me figure that out, even if I don't already know those voicings. And finally, we're going to learn how we can use those CAGED patterns to help us out anywhere across the length of the neck. Because the CAGED scale patterns and the CAGED chord patterns are movable. They can be slid around on the neck. Okay, so as we've learned before, the CAGED chords are a way of identifying different regions of the neck. Okay, so here are the 5 chord shapes of the CAGED system right across the neck. We start in the first position with the chord C. We play the C chord in the shape of an A at the 3rd fret. We play the G chord we play the C chord in the shape of a G at the 8th fret, like that, 5 and 8. And then we play the C chord in the shape of a E here. And then we play the C chord in the shape of a D here. As you can see and hear, these are all the C chord. This is all the chord C. Okay? But being played in a different way in each of the zones. So what that means is that each of these areas of the neck has its own individual roadmap that allows us to identify both the major chord and the individual notes that the chords are made from. And that overall map can be moved around, just as any of the chord shapes can be. If we think about it, since the chords are made up of notes from the major scale, it makes sense that in each of these locations there is a corresponding version of the major scale. Let's look at both the chords and the scales together. So here's the C chord in the shape of a C, and here's the major scale across the notes underneath that. Okay, here's the C chord in the shape of an A, and here's the major scale across those same shape. Let's look at the chord in the shape of a G. Again, this is a C chord, but being played in the shape of a G. And here are the notes. Here's the same chord, but now in the shape of an E, being played at the 8th fret. And here's what that scale looks like. And again, here's the same chord, but in the shape of a D, being played between the 10th and 13th fret. And here's the major scale in that position. So those are all 5 of the chords and the corresponding scales that are underneath them, or scale shapes. This is everything I'm doing in here is in the key of C, and everything that I'm doing in here can be moved into any key. Now, let's talk about how do I get this into my fingers. So here's the drill section of my CAGED chords and CAGED scales method. So what we're going to do here is we're going to play a chord and then a pair of descending thirds or ascending thirds and then another chord. What we're trying to do is internalize into our finger consciousness, a connection in between a particular layout of the major scale that corresponds to a particular chord form. So for example, I'm just going to show you briefly the C. I always begin with descending scales first. I recommend practicing your descending runs and descending scales at least twice as much as ascending. For some reason, it seems to be trickier for us to internalize descending riffs, and I don't know why. So do it twice as much. I'm going to do the C form playing pairs of thirds interrupted by the chord. Play the chord and the pairs of thirds because we want to get used to this particular layout of the chord and this particular layout of the individual notes so that our hand starts to feel comfortable with both of these and associates them together. Now we're going to go up. That's the C form. Okay, this is the A form, and I'm playing this C major scale. I'm playing a C major chord and a C major scale, but in the shape of A, so in between the 3rd and 5th fret like this. Okay. Here's the C major scale in the A form, descending. Okay, I'm trying to play it here, and I'm going to play the chord, and then this is in between the 3rd fret with the pointer on the 3rd. Okay. And now we're going to do that going up, again, starting with the C major chord in the A form. The physical learning of this and the practicing of these ideas is much more important to us than any amount of theory. Again, that drill is also available in the G position, the E position, and the D position. Send me a request in the comments or send me an email, bonner.harris@gmail.com, and I'll send you a copy of the full drill across all 5 caged positions for free. How does this stuff help us with chords? The sheet music that we use from the real book and that you'll often run into in a jazz combo kind of context is called a lead sheet. Usually it just has the name of the chords, the melody that the singer's singing, and the words. That's a lead sheet. From that, you have to be able to comp the chords or to accompany the singer using the chord names that are just put on the sheet. Okay? So let's say that you have a lead sheet that just has the chord names. You need chord diagrams or an understanding of what those names mean so that you can play. Let's look at I Got Rhythm by George and Ira Gershwin. Okay, the chords for it are B flat 6, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7. And it's... So let's start with B flat 6. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try playing that in this A form. Okay, and here's the B flat in the A form. But I need to add the 6, which is this note here. Now, how do I know what note it is? Well, I look at my diagram of the major scale in the context of my chord, and then I can see that the 6 is right here on the 3rd fret of the E string. That's the 6 in the B flat. That's the 6 in the A form version of the major scale. And the A form version of the major scale and the A form version of this chord are what I'm using here. Okay? So that's a simple example of how I can use my knowledge of where the notes are in the major scale to add an additional note beyond a simple triad for a more complex chord. If you want a copy of the worksheet that shows the caged chords and the corresponding caged layouts of the major scale, just leave me a message in the comments, or you can email me, bonner.harris@gmail.com, and I'll send you a free copy of the worksheet that goes along with this lesson. You will notice I refer to the scale degrees by the degree number, the 6 or the flat 7 or what have you. As you have seen before, we can use our caged chord shapes all over the neck. Okay? I play a C chord here. I can play the same chord shape over here and turn it into an E. I can play it over here and it's an F. Okay? All of the chords are all movable. Sometimes we have to bar a couple of the notes, but that's what happens with movable chords. So we just move these shapes into a different position, and we're using the same shape, but to play different chords with. That's how we get hundreds and hundreds of chords out of 5 only caged shapes. Okay, so again, let's look at this with the F7 chord, okay? Here's an F chord being played with a C shape. So initially, this C shape is down here, and I'm playing C. If I move it up here to the 8th fret, same shape, now I'm playing an F. Okay, and all that's changed is I've changed where the root note is. The root note in the C form is on the A string. So now, if I want to play the F7 chord, again, I know how to use that C shape to go up here and play an F. Now I look at the corresponding scale diagram for the C shape, and it shows me that the 7 note is here on the G string. And I just play my C, but now I'm adding that extra note with the pinky, and there's my F7. So having an awareness of where the notes of the major scale are unlocks the toy box of having access to all of these other notes, the 7, the 9, the 11, the 13, the flat 13. We can find them all. All of this gets unlocked if we have in our minds both the shape of the caged chords, but also underneath that, the secondary layer of the shape of the major scale, the secondary layer of the shape of the major scale that sits like a layer underneath the chord and contains all the notes you could ever possibly need. And these notes, of course, are available to us for altering the harmony of our chords, but they're also available to us for playing melody. Now, just as a little tangent, if you are interested in learning more about playing melody using this awareness of the major scale, I'm going to put a card up here and I'm going to direct you to my lessons on triads, because triads again connect you to all of this information, all of this caged layout information, but they do so in a manner that again is intended to be practically useful rather than theoretically heavy. Let's talk about what we've talked about today. Today we looked at the 5 caged chord shapes: C, A, G, E, D. Okay? Today we talked about the 5 caged patterns of the major scale that live underneath each of those 5 chord shapes. So altogether we have a roadmap of chords across the entire neck of the guitar. But we also have the layout of the major scale in each of those 5 positions, all the way across the neck of the guitar. We've looked at a simple practice drill to begin to associate the layout of the major scale that corresponds to each of the 5 chords. And if you want a copy of the drill notes, send me an email, bonner.harris@gmail.com, or leave me a comment under the video, and I'll get you a copy of that drill for free. We talked briefly about how we can use this awareness of the major scale note locations to help us to advance beyond basic triad chords. We can now add in the extra notes that we need, or we can see where the movable notes are if we need to make a dominant 7 chord or a minor chord or an 11 chord. All the notes are identified in the CAGED scale patterns, all the notes that you're ever going to need. The final thing we looked at is how we can use either the CAGED chord patterns or the CAGED scale patterns to help us understand where the notes are in any area of the neck of our guitar, because all of these patterns are movable. I can look at a C chord down here, or I can play a G chord here using the same chord shape. And of course, the definition of the major scale simply sits as a layer under the particular chord shape. So, if you want a copy of the worksheet that corresponds to the CAGED chords and the CAGED major scale, leave me a comment or send me an email. And the same thing, if you want a copy of the notes for the drill, leave me a comment or send me an email letting me know what you'd like, and I'll send it to you at no charge. If you want to learn more about the CAGED system, or you want to learn more about chords, or if you want to begin to step into the area of triads, is the jumping off point for more exploration of melody and beginning to step into the area of chord melody, then follow the links that are going to pop up over my shoulders here somewhere, and there are some videos there that you can follow along. There's a lot of material right here on my channel. Come on back and join me again soon. This is Bonner.